U.S. history students, and welcome to the Quarter 2 test. This test has 24 questions in Part 1, 2 of which are written responses. I'll be reading through the questions today for you. This recording might be in several parts just due to the length in the Part 2, which I will also record. Question number 1 is a written response. The Industrial Revolution began in England in the late 1700s. By the 1820s, factories and industry had arrived in America. The first factories began in New England, in the New England region, here in the U.S. New England is the northeastern U.S., states like Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Write at least 2 sentences to explain 2 reasons why the Industrial Revolution started in New England. Question 2. Choose 2 examples of new political strategies used by Adams and Jackson during the election of 1828. Barbecues, parades, songs, and rallies to encourage support for their campaign. Televised political commercials sharing their political ideologies. Mudslinging or the use of insults and accusations against the opponent to win votes. Wrote letters to Americans requesting their votes. Remember, you're choosing 2 examples. Question number 3. In the 1830s, what issue led to a power struggle between the states and the federal government, as well as the threat of South Carolina seceding from the Union? The election of Andrew Jackson, nullification, or the ability for states to choose not to follow a federal law, whether or not to change the Constitution. Question number 4. What was the impact of the Indian Removal Act of 1830? The Cherokee were allowed to remain in Georgia due to a Supreme Court decision in their favor. Native Americans were removed from their lands in Georgia and relocated by force to present-day Oklahoma along the Trail of Tears. This law resulted in a reform movement to return land to the Native Americans and the establishment of Georgia as the first Native American state. Question number 5. In 1845, the editor of the Democratic Review, John L. Sullivan, stated that America was guaranteed to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions. What concept is being described in the quote? Popular sovereignty, manifest destiny, or the Great Migration? Question 6. Select 2 items that were included in the terms of the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the treaty signed at the end of the Mexican-American War. The United States gains the new states of Missouri, Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa. The United States paid Mexico $15 million for land obtained as a result of the end of the war. The United States demanded a permanent military presence in Mexico. The United States gains territory in present-day California, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. That should say California in the last option there. That's just a typo. Number 7, in order to take advantage of a growing national market economy and to get goods to market more easily, Americans had to create an improved transportation system, change the trade system and make the buyer come to the seller, or rely on French traders in the West who knew how to navigate the rivers. Question 8. When Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, he had hoped it would reduce the reliance on slaves in cotton production. Instead, the invention increased the demand for slave labor. Why? The cotton gin didn't work well, so slaves were still needed. Southerners didn't trust industrialization and wanted to show that the slave system worked better than Whitney's invention. The cotton gin allowed cotton to be processed for market more quickly. Therefore, farmers wanted to grow more cotton, which required more slaves. Question number 9. Why was there a need for reform in the U.S. during the mid-1800s? Workers were working long hours in dangerous factories. Slavery was spreading into the new states. All of the above. Question number 10. How did the Underground Railroad help slaves escape during the first half of the 19th century? It organized networks of routes where slaves were able to flee to the north to gain freedom. It helped slave owners capture slaves that escaped to the north. It was a railroad company that helped slaves reach their freedom. 11. Match the following events that led to the Civil War. Your descriptions are over here on the left, and the name of those events are over here on the right. The events are the Compromise of 1850, Fugitive Slave Act, Kansas-Nebraska Act, and Dred Scott court case. First description. Ruling that denied African American citizenship, and Congress could not prohibit slavery in the new territories. Second description. Law passed to settle the dispute over the status of slavery in land gained from the Mexican-American War. Third description. Law passed that allowed popular sovereignty in Western territories that led to violence and political corruption. Fourth description. Law that made it a crime to assist runaway slaves and required law officers to help capture them. Question number 12. Identify the cause and the effect in this scenario. Because A, South Carolina decided to B. What option below correctly fills in the blanks A and B in the statement above? Slavery was made illegal. B, secede from the United States. Second option, A, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. B, secede from the United States. Third option, A, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. B, remain a part of the United States. Question 13. Why did Lincoln establish martial law in Maryland, a border state, at the start of the Civil War? He identified a spy network and wanted to find those involved. He was so angry over the secession of South Carolina that he became a military dictator, establishing complete control over the states remaining in the Union. Maryland also contained Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. If Maryland seceded from the Union, the capital would be surrounded by the enemy. Number 14, match the Civil War battles to its importance. The battles are attack on Fort Sumter, Gettysburg, Antietam, First Battle of Bull Run, and Appomattox Courthouse. The descriptions are where General Lee surrendered to General Grant, ending the Civil War, hurt the dignity of the Union but boosted the morale in the South, single bloodiest day in American history, major turning point of the war that signaled the South had little chance to win the war because of loss of life and no hope of gaining foreign support, considered the start of the Civil War. Question number 15. What document includes the following quote? All persons held as slaves within any states that are in rebellion against the United States shall be then and thenceforward and forever free. Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment, or the 15th Amendment. What was the main idea of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address speech? A portion of the speech is included above. That the Union Army was getting tired of fighting the Civil War and would be giving up too soon, that slavery is wrong and ending slavery is the only reason they are fighting the Civil War, that the United States was built on ideas of democracy and equality for all, and that the war is being fought to ensure the government and nation continue to exist. The quote states, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Question 17. Select the 3 ways women supported the war effort and home front during the Civil War. Again, you are selecting 3 ways. Office, managing family businesses and farms while men were at war, establishing new nursing organizations, caring for the sick and wounded, revolutionizing military strategy, serving secretly as soldiers and spies. Question number 18. Following best identifies why the South lost the Civil War. Their large military run by trained military officers, their lack of resources and soldiers to make up the loss in major battles like Gettysburg, or their familiarity with the terrain where the battles were fought in the South. Question 19. Match the law passed during Reconstruction to the correct description of what that law states. Granted citizenship to African Americans, granted African American males the right to vote, or made slavery illegal. The options are the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 15th Amendment. Question number 20. How did the Compromise of 1877 end Reconstruction? It approved a recount of the 1876 election and eliminated debt of Southern states. It ended Reconstruction by removing federal troops from the South in return for approving Rutherford B. Hayes as president. It prevented the spread of slavery by prohibiting it in all new Western territories. Question number 21. Why did sharecropping develop as a replacement for slavery in the South after the passage of the 13th Amendment during Reconstruction? White Southern society wanted to force freed slaves back into agricultural work and keep them financially dependent on white landowners. There was little land available for farming in the South, and after the Civil War, freed slaves refused to leave the land they knew. Question number 22, which of the following is not a reason that people chose to settle in the West in the late 1800s? A desire to start a new life, seeking riches, specifically gold, a severe economic depression in the East. The Act of 1862 offered 160 acres of free land to farmers who would improve it within 5 years. How did this legislation influence settlement in the United States? It motivated immigrants to move to specified areas in California. It allowed freed slaves, women, and immigrants to seek new opportunities in the West. The act set aside areas of Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois for the settlement of American Indians. The last question, question number 24. Give 2 examples of how Native Americans were forced to assimilate through the Dawes Act and education. And a reminder to complete part 2 of the test. After you complete part 1, submit press submit at the end when you're finished, and make sure to go on to part 2. The constructive response question for part 2 of the test. Create a well-developed essay to explain the economies of the North and the South prior to the Civil War. Your response should include the items listed below. Describe the economy for both the North and South, explain the relationship between the North and South and how they work together, and identify why the South did not develop a widespread industry. Use evidence from the textbook and class discussions to support your response. Link here for a rubric that will be used to grade your response. Good luck on your test. Make sure to click submit when you have finished.